So please welcome Christopher August to the show. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, it's great to see you. It's great to be here. Feel like I have a full heart of gratitude right now.
Oh, you and me both. I've been enjoying getting to know you. And if I can say one thing, in the last 8 days since I got your app, Beats and Breath, every morning, I haven't missed one for 8 days. I just did Prosper today, so I don't remember. It might have been seven. That might be 7 days. And now, I usually have my huge morning routine, and I've been seeking this. I do the Joe Dispenza meditations, and my husband is like, "How do you meditate?" And I was just like, "He's never, we're in our 50s." And I think of how great if he could just figure it out and not to just go straight to his computer. So
Yeah.
I give him your beats and breath. He got excited. He did it from his desk, which I'll take whatever I can get. So every morning I've been doing that. And oh my gosh, like, and now it's where it is addicting. Like I was sending the app to all my friends, and it's your voice, and it's the way you breathe in and the way you talk and the music. It's the mixture of everything. And I've been doing these. I have retreats now monthly here in San Diego that sparked something like I was telling you about the podcast. It was a retreat. Okay. And then it just all came together. And we started with breath work. I was doing a
Mhm.
breath work session, and I was telling the woman, I said, we need to do retreats. We need to have this in, we need to start doing this. So it started with breath work. And then I started doing the sound. It's called Cali, and it's those beats that it's like that music that's to your brain. And so
Mhm.
what your app does for me is that and the breath work together is, and I know that's the whole concept of why you're doing it, but that's what it's a craving. And it's like you understand, and then I get today where I'm holding my breath, and or like letting it out, and you're like, take a little sip if you have to. And it's like a mind control. I just love
Mhm.
it. So anyway, you've been in my ear for the last week. I've enjoyed listening to your journey, and just to share you with my world and uncover your magic, because there's so much. And, when I think about you and your purpose and all the things you're doing through Gene Keys, which we'll get into, I never knew really that much about Gene Keys. I've interviewed people with human design, and I know it's similar because you compare the two. But reading about Gene Keys, I just watched your master class on the explanation of that. So I get why you're into it, because you're so into getting people to find their purpose instead of going to work and thinking they have to live this life and get retired when they're 65. But I'm sure, I mean, that's like your purpose is to do that,
Mhm.
is to light people's light and to get people to realize we are here for so much more. There's so much more to this life than what we have been told to do. So anyway, that's what I feel about you. It's so cool to see your journey, but I would love for you to bring people back to, I guess, like kind of, I mean, you don't have to go all the way to your growing up, but you went to college to do that 9 to 5 corporate job. But then you got this little thing that started to spark, and there you go. So start wherever you want.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for the beautiful words and the reflections. It really means a lot. And, it's that sort of insight, that people share about what we've created and what we're doing that really continues to keep me going because of course there's been many difficult and hard days and nights, but it's that passion, it's that fire in my soul that keeps me going and something that I just absolutely love doing and would do it in so many times over. I would continue to come back to this path and I'm so happy that it's impacting so many people's lives, so thank you for that. And yeah, my journey, just like everybody has their own unique story, right? And we can extract these timelines from people's stories that are these pivotal initiatory moments in which you are being called to step into a greater version of yourself. And it's oftentimes very scary, and there's a lot of fear involved. It's terrifying to take that proverbial leap off the cliff into the unknown. But if you don't do that, then you feel like you may be missing out on something. And that for me was that feeling I had back in 2012 when I was just finishing my master's degree and I was working at a tech firm and doing quite well for myself. And especially at that time in my mid 20s, late 20s. And I had pretty much everything you could want on paper, right? I had a master's degree. I graduated at the top of my class. I had a beautiful new car, an apartment. I, was dating amazing women. I was partying. I was having fun. I was enjoying my 20s. But something in me was telling me that this is not the end of the road. There's something more. And I had always been that sort of seeker and wanting to know more about myself and my place in the world. And I just was not satisfied. I was feeling empty. And although I was being called to sort of climb the corporate ladder from the higher ups, it just was not in resonance and alignment any longer. And so I prayed every single day for a sign. I said, show me a sign, whatever it is. I need to know that there's something more and what is my purpose here. And one day I was driving home on the highway. This is when I was living in Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. And I was driving home. It was a late afternoon, early evening, and I saw a billboard, and the billboard said, "Are you ready to answer the call?" And in the bottom right corner, it said sponsored by the Peace Corps. And so I was like, Peace Corps, what is that? So I went home, I Googled, I researched, and I quickly found out that this was a grassroots and American organization that supported people in different countries, 80 countries around the world, and that you go and volunteer and live there for 2 years. And so I got very intrigued because it was kind of like scratching that itch of those deeper values of wanting to help others, of traveling, of gaining wisdom from different cultures and communities. And so, long story short, I applied. I basically went through a series of tests that took me an entire year. And after that year, I got a letter in the mail that says, congratulations, Christopher. You have been accepted to Peace Corps Tanzania, and you depart in January, I think it was, and you have 7 days to decide.
Mhm.
And so right then and there was that moment, right, that I was just talking about where you're standing on the cliff and you're like, holy shit, like I don't know if I can jump. I don't know if I can do this. But for me, it was like it was a full bodied yes. Like I need to at least see what this is about. And so I did. And several months later, I was departing, flew over there, and I lived in Tanzania for 2 years of my life. So I'll pause there for a moment. But that for me was that initiation. And we all have these moments. And so it's really just tuning into yourself and saying yes to what feels good.
Oh, 100%. I'm with you. Because every time I've ever experienced magic in my life is when I've pushed past the fear and
Mm,
said yes to that voice every single time. And it's times where people think I'm crazy. People think, like, you're really doing that? And yeah, I am doing it. Something's calling me. And being a mom and, trying to impress upon them that, it's just an illusion. That fear is it's just something it's not even real, and so just go do it. And it's so
yeah.
fun to be that person teaching them that and seeing them follow through and seeing the magic. But I always say, like, every time I've uncovered more of my magic is when I've just jumped off that cliff. So that's what I love about everything about you and what really your why you're here and what's you're inspired to show people their magic.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think everybody has this magic, as you call it, within themselves, and this magic is permeating their entire energetic field at all times. Yet this magic, and whether you want to call it your gifts, your soul speaking to you, your intuition, this magic that lies within you, oftentimes is quite subtle until it's not, right? Until you begin to listen to the subtle layers the whispers that are within you. And when you begin to really tap into that magic, something so incredibly beautiful transpires in your life, and you begin walking and trusting that magic. And I think that's an important part, which I like to imbue onto everybody that perhaps is listening to this, or even just the people I work with, is that you have to build this muscle of trust, to trust yourself, to keep walking and following that magic every step of the way, because there's many forces that are going to try to thwart you or throw you off from your path. And it can be very easy to listen to that ego that just says, stay here, things are good, things are steady, things are easy. But there is that continuous moment in which you have to be courageous and step in and continuing to follow that. So, for me, life is magic. And when you begin to understand the cosmic web that we are all connected to, and you feel that and perceive that, it's very, very powerful and incredible. And that's my wish for everybody.
When you were in Africa and you describe where there's no water, you'd have to take baths with buckets and go to the bathroom in holes and all the things. For those 2 years, were you just like, I know I'm here for a reason? I mean, I feel like, were you a- awakening as you lived there, or was it just like, I'm going to do this? Where was your head then?
I mean, it was certainly a challenge, not living without with the modern amenities and all the things that we're used to. But over time, you tap into your primal sense, right? You tap into your primitive sort of humanness that, especially in Africa too, it's like taking you back to your roots, right? It's like that's where all of humanity arguably is stemmed from, is Tanzania, Ethiopia, this part of the world. Very, very powerful energy there. So yeah, I tapped into this primal way of living. It certainly was not always easy, but to answer your question, yes, it was that time where I was very much questioning everything. Although I had started my quote unquote spiritual path maybe back in 2008, it really wasn't until I got there in which everything began to catalyze, right? That entire experience was a very transformative moment, which I had to face these parts of myself that I didn't want to look at because I had no choice. I was in the middle of a village in the middle of nowhere, 17 and a half hour bus ride from the largest city of Dar es Salaam, and so you have to think like when you're in that situation, there's nothing you can do to escape yourself. And especially in nature, it's very confronting and living in that way. And so there was many moments, very powerful aha moments, and a lot of oh shit moments on that experience that really played a massive role to where I am today. And that's why I say it was an initiation.
Yeah, when you came back and had to uh get into earth mode, how did you was that what was your were you ready to start seeking more? Like, what was your next step after that? What did that inspire you to do?
No, I was actually very depressed. I came back and I went through about 6 to 8 months of severe depression. I didn't
Hmm.
really leave the house. It was winter time in Buffalo. I went to the grocery store and was very overwhelmed. There was a very much a sense of reverse culture shock where I came back to this really seemingly backwards way of living and just really getting caught up into this web and matrix of this consumerist narrative that really didn't make sense to me. And so for me, it was actually really difficult. All my friends were still sort of doing the same things. I had changed drastically, and I was very lost. I was very confused and just very down.
Hmm. When did you run across that Brian Weiss book, Many Lives, Many Masters? Was it after that?
No, it was before. That was the kickstart, I would say, to my path. That was in 2008.
Okay.
And that was sort of that invitation to the realm of seeking deeper.
And so this breath work, I look at you and you know, breath work comes to my mind. When did that start coming of an interest to you?
So that started actually in Africa. I was randomly, synchronistically, whatever you want to call it, I was given a thumb drive, a USB drive that oftentimes when volunteers would see each other, we'd exchange information and TV shows, movies, whatever. And so I got this thumb drive and I downloaded it onto my computer. And one day it was in one afternoon, I was looking through it and I saw Kundalini yoga. And I said, what's Kundalini yoga? I never heard of this before. So I started to turn on a video and I ended up doing the practice. At that time, I was meditating, doing some yoga. And I realized after the first time of doing that, I'm like, holy shit, this is technology. There's something powerful to this. And if anybody doesn't really know the background of Kundalini yoga, essentially that's three pillars of breath, movement, and sound. And using this very specific technique called breath of fire, which is a rapid form of breathing. And it was then I started to do this pretty, much daily. And that was another form of a catalyst that woke me up to the power of my breath. Before that, I was sort of asleep to the breath because it's an automatic function. And so that was the introduction, but then the years following was a deepening into that. And I went deep, I went far, and I realized that one of my core gifts in this lifetime, which really comes from many lifetimes as I perceive it, is the breath, is working with the breath and teaching people how to work with the power of their breath and doing it in what I've co-created in a fun and modern way of working with it. So
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I am not kidding you. That app is magic. When
thank
you,
you.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you for doing it. Because I think of even listening to every morning going, gosh, he really it takes a lot of work to get this, the music and the sound. And who's the woman that speaks in there?
We have a couple women on the app. We have Danica, her artist name is Anima. That's my co-founder, Johnny Buffalo, who creates all the music. That's his girlfriend.
Yeah,
She's
that's
doing,
even cool, you know?
and then yeah, so she's doing background vocals. Then we have a woman guidance who does guidance, and her name is Brooke Wolf. She's an incredible woman as well. And so we wanted to add some female guidance in there as well. And she's an amazing person.
So me doing this every day, and my husband was asking me today because I said, I'm going up to do my beads and breath. And have you done yours yet? And he's like, no, but I should. I said, yeah, but I'm not one of those wives that I just like to set it out there. If it works, great.
Plant the seed.
I plant the seed, exactly. So when I'm listening to it and I'm doing the breath and I'm all in and I can see the buildup every day, right? Like I feel different today. It's like it activated me more for some reason. Will you explain the benefits of that? Because I see it when I do my retreats and I've done breath work just, by myself without your app. But will you explain the benefits and why you have that, even that sequence on your app?
So the benefits being to just breathwork in general and what we've
Yes.
created. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've created a technology called what we call Sonic Breathwork. It's not anything in the sense of like innovative where breath and sound are met together. Like that's been being done for a while. There's many people that do it, but the way in which we do it, there is a science to it. There is a sequence to it. What we've really wanted, our core goal and intention with this work is to take an ancient form of healing, which is breathing, pranayama, with modern cutting edge musical compositions that awaken the primal energies within your body. And that's why a lot of the sort of musical genre, it's these sort of, you'll find some ancient instrumentation in there, but with these modern trap hip hop beats, because those beats hit the core of who you are. Now, not everything is obviously activating. We have some down tempo stuff with strings, pianos, beautiful instruments as well. But really, the benefits to this practice, especially the more that you do it, is, I mean, insurmountable. I mean, there's so many, it's so difficult to list all of them out, but just to kind of like list out a few of the core ones, aside from the obvious physical experiences that people have where they don't feel as stressed, they don't feel as overwhelmed and anxious, which for any breath work or meditation, that's going to be the result. But beyond that, there's a profound connection to self that comes in, a clarity, really where you begin to awaken and unlock that magic that we're talking about within you, those superpowers. Everything begins to fully come to the surface and be shown and liberated in this beautiful way where you can really tap into a heightened state of consciousness and awareness beyond the noise of the mind, right? Because we're always stuck with this mental chatter. The mind slows down and we're tapping into the quote unquote ethereal field. And this is sort of my favorite thing to talk about when I talk about breath work. Everybody talks about the physical, mental, emotional. There's obvious benefits there. They're there. You'll feel happier and more free, at peace with yourself. But there's the metaphysical that not a lot of people talk about. And if we want, we can dive deeper. What I've perceived on certain journeys, where I've gone into dark rooms, where I've done plant medicine, I've seen directly how the breath interacts with our genetic code and our DNA, and what that's actually doing beneath the surface, and the ways in which we then feel awakened and connected in this new way. There's very tangible things that are happening within the physical body that are very profound and powerful.
Like what?
So let me feel into the best way, because this is a quite deep conversation. So what I've seen and what I've perceived. So back in 2022, I went into a 5-day dark room experience. If anybody's never heard of a dark retreat, it's essentially being in complete blackness for a number of days, however many days you want. That was a very profound, another catalyzing experience. But it was within that experience. So what happens when you're in the darkness after, 24 to 48 hours, your melatonin levels skyrocket and you begin to really go into some very profound, a profound dreaming state. And also your pineal gland begins to open and the secretion of that melatonin creates this DMT effect where you begin to have visuals. When I was in there on the fourth day, I was just doing breath work. I was breathing very deeply and rapidly, and I began to see my own energetic body and my own energy system, what people might call the chakras, right? I began to see them and perceive them in real time, which I had never really done before. I can feel it, but to
Mhm.
see it, like to like clairvoyantly see it, was another experience. And what I perceived was what people talk about, how we have this fluid that runs up and down our spine, and this cranial sacral fluid that actually then runs into the back of our brain, which is called the cave of Brahma. It's a very powerful part of our bodies where this creates a lot of our spiritual experiences we have. And so this fluid moving up and down the spine, I perceived it as this powerful golden light that is awakening the dormant parts of our DNA and our genetic code, that what scientists may call junk DNA. That's bullshit. There's a lot of latent potential that lies dormant within us, and it's essentially waking up our superpowers. The human body is extremely intelligent, extremely powerful, and extremely wise. And when we know how to work with our breath, we are actually essentially waking up all of the bodies, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the astral, and the ethereal bodies. And they begin to combine together to create this very profound and transformative experience. And really, beneath all of that, to bring it back down to a grounded place, you're also working with your central nervous system, which is very much responsible for what state you are in at any given time. And when you heal this nervous system, you heal your life.
Hmm.
And this is why the breath is extremely important on every single level. And I'm actually writing a book that's almost done called Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, because there's a lot here that needs to be discussed because it's very powerful.
When you lately you're doing something with cannabis, like a breath, what is that? What's the benefit? Why would you want
Yeah.
to do that? Because we're gonna offer that on Sunday at my retreat, and I was wondering because I have a woman that wants to introduce that, but tell me the benefits of that because I don't understand.
Yeah, so we have a project, me and two other dear friends, Ryan Sprague, who's a cannabis expert, and Aaron Apke, who is a spiritual teacher. And we've created a project called Breathe with Cannabis. And the intention behind this is to really, again, it's all for healing purposes and for people to really feel into and connect with who they truly are and their authenticity and power. And cannabis is been a beautiful teacher of mine for many years, especially in the ways in which I've worked with it ceremonially and intentionally. It's a very powerful plant ally and teacher. But a lot of people, it's the most accessible of all the plant medicines. And so it's been really stigmatized, and it's also been used as a numbing agent. But when you begin to work with cannabis, you begin to see its profound teachings that it has to offer. And it's really changed my life, and it's given me insights into myself that previously were undetected. It kind of lifts the veil in a way. And when you marry it with breath work, something very interesting happens where basically both medicines, breath and cannabis, they are beginning to give you direct access to your subconscious mind and also to your somatic body. It shows you where you're limiting yourself mentally, where there's certain fear-based beliefs you're still carrying, and then also it taps you into the or into the somatic body where you are holding certain patterns of energy that are potentially there as a result of trauma or wounding. So it gives you access to the deeper layers and wisdom within yourself. And as a result, you can begin to heal profoundly from, using those medicines together. And I've seen people that have, I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. People have said, like, I feel like I've healed 100 years of trauma. Feels like the most profound ayahuasca experience I've ever had. Never doing ayahuasca, like just using these two medicines, and people just having really profound shifts in their life that are sustainable and actually last. But again, cannabis is not necessary. You can reach heightened states with breath work alone, but it is a really powerful extra component to add in if done with intention and with consciousness.
Oh, neat. I'm excited. Let's go on ayahuasca while we're here, since you just had told me you just come back from a ayahuasca
Mhm.
journey. Can we, can you explain your experience with that and what calls you to do that? Like where are you trying, what are you trying to, where are you trying to go with the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ayahuasca?
Great question. So, this past experience, before I get into that, it's been several years, 3 years since my last experience. My first time was in 2016 when I was backpacking through South America, and I was in Ecuador. I got called into the Amazon jungle, and I worked with an indigenous family there. And that was my first experience, which was quite intense and quite profound in many ways. And I'm so glad to have really worked with them at that time. It was this very small family with these grandmothers, grandfathers, parents, kids all around in this beautiful Maloka on this beautiful land. And, that being my first experience. And the reason I was called there is because it just kept showing up in my field, right? Like anything, if we look at, there's many signs and synchronicities always at play. If you just listen, you can start to tune in. So it just kept coming in. So I was like, you know what? It sounds like this could be the best experience, considering I'm right at the roots of where it's grown, where it's cultivated, and all of that, and within the hands of a very beautiful family. So since then, I've embarked on several different journeys, about six at this time, and all of them have offered their own uniqueness, their own medicine. It's also a very powerful plant spirit and ally. I have lots of respect and reverence for it. It's not for everybody, and it is something that will bring you face to face with every aspect of yourself. So if you're not willing to face things about yourself, then she might not be the best medicine for you, because it is very confronting and
Hmm.
can take you into the underworlds of your own consciousness and shadows. And that's happened to me on a few occasions. That has definitely been very, very intense and difficult. And I've spent many years integrating that. But this last experience, I really went in with this intention of recapitulating my relationship to the plant because the last time I did it, I had a very traumatic experience, which really created a lot of moments of psychosis and also going into this deep, shadowy place that I was healing a lot for myself as well as the collective. And I was experiencing the human
Hmm.
collective in a very intense way. So I'm not going to get into that story, but this last time it was very profound as usual. An amazing healer named Da Vinci, amazing man, beautiful heart, intention of joy, grace, and presence was what I went in with, and really what I received as well as some very powerful messages that, yeah, I feel very, very grateful for.
Wow. Yeah, I've never done it. I've never been called to do it. I'm more and more interview people all the time, a lot recently, or along the last 2 years for sure. That's a big topic that we talk about. And it's like I know it will call me when it's supposed to be called, right? Isn't that
Exactly.
how you look at it?
No reason to force it. And like one caveat here that I think is important to message because a lot of people these days with psychedelics being legalized and certain things, it's become a sort of spiritual ego thing, in my opinion. Everybody's, oh, I did ayahuasca, and like
Right.
it's been a big like this like influencer thing that I just don't really like behind it. But what I do see is the medicine is infiltrating different spaces for a reason to really begin to wake people up in many ways. And I think the most important thing that I could stress when it comes to psychedelics, if anybody's interested, or plant medicine, is that, it's a very sacred experience and should be taken as such. So many people want to continue to chase peak experiences, but they're not integrating their lessons into their life and embodying what it teachings they're receiving. And that becomes a problem. And that's being seen in a very big way right now. So that's where my sort of qualm is about all this world, and something I definitely don't brag about. I have a lot of respect for these teachers. They know much more than I do.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love that. I love how you just said that. Okay, so let's go to the gene keys. So in 2017, I believe, is when you came across the gene keys and
Hmm.
they spoke to you. They called you again, the next calling.
Next calling, one of many.
Tell me tell me, so I understand the gene keys now because of you. And I've never had my reading, but it's very detailed, like the human design, which you could, unless you have someone go over that with you,
Yeah.
it's like, but I understand, like you talk about how the most powerful time of your um, life is 0 to 7.
Hmm.
But they break it up in the seven, even when you're in your mother's womb, and then from 7 to 14. So can maybe give
Yeah,
a brief.
I'll give a sort of high level practical overview for somebody listening that might not know what the Gene Keys are. So essentially the Gene Keys is a code book for consciousness expansion. It's a system for self-discovery that combines your personal astrological makeup with the 64 archetypes of the Chinese I Ching, which is a very ancient text set of wisdom teachings that speak to this idea that we all have these archetypes within us that are embedded within our genetic code, within our DNA. And when we begin to work with these archetypes, we begin to catalyze the release of our creative potential and our purpose and all of that. And so essentially, when you look at the gene keys, they are a map of your soul. So you, as a soul, chose certain imprints of shadows of gifts and what the gene keys call cities, which is the highest expression or potential of that archetype, that you've chose to imprint these within you as a way of you expanding and evolving as a human being on this planet, as a spiritual being having a human experience. And so the reason I love it so much and the reason I fell in love with the system is because it finally gave me a sort of blueprint, a roadmap that I could follow. Whereas sometimes in the spiritual realm, everything can be very far-fetched and it could seem like everything's out of grasp. Whereas when you have a system, and a system, in my opinion, that makes sense, it takes you through this set of sequences. And in the Gene Keys, there's three sequences. There's the activation sequence, which is all about discovering your genius and higher purpose. There's the Venus sequence, which you were referring to before. This is all about healing your core wounds from 0 to 21 and how you interact within your relationships. It's all intended to open your heart. And then the last sequence is the pearl sequence, the triangle at the top. And that's all about liberating prosperity. And prosperity meaning not only, money, but prosperity in every aspect of your life, health, relationships, purpose, work, so forth. And so, really, when you begin to follow these sequences through the art of contemplation, which is what the Gene Keys teaches, you are transformed deeply from the inside out. And I personally have had many powerful healings and transformations as a result of doing this work myself, and of course now guiding others as a Gene Keys guide. But the reason I fell in love with it, besides what I've already shared, is that when you begin to work with this system, you begin to see the very, very powerful biochemical, physiological, psychological, spiritual changes that begin to happen. And why I combine it with breath work is because breath work does the same in its own unique way. And the breath is a way to the deeper portals of your own DNA. And that's why they combine super well together, and why I do it in the way I do it, which I don't know really anybody else it like that, but I find it to be super powerful.
And when you say it's transformed you or so I've had my human design done,
Mhm.
but what am I doing to be transformed from that reading?
So human design works a little bit different, which we can briefly talk about if we want to. But with the Gene Keys, is you have in your profile, you have these 11 spheres. And these 11 spheres have different meanings, right? They have, your life's work, your evolution, your radiant purpose, your IQ, EQ, SQ, and so forth. And as you go through these in these spheres, there's gene keys that are imprinted in these spheres. And each gene key, like I mentioned before, has these three frequency bands: the shadow, which is this unconscious level of fear in your system in which you're still victimized by this energy. There's the gift, which is the middle frequency. This is really the blossoming of our heart happens and we begin to step into this essence of this gift or whatever that archetype is. And then the city, which is the highest potential expression of that gene key. Now, the way it works is that as you contemplate, read through the Gene Keys book, through that in relation to the sphere you're contemplating in, whether it's your life's work or whatever, reading that Gene Key, going through the lines, which is a whole nother conversation, you begin to literally awaken this energy within you, because when you read the Gene Keys, there are channeled transmissions,
Ah,
wisdom teachings to your soul. They speak to your soul.
got
So
it.
you begin to see how when you start contemplating them, your life begins to shift and change in many ways.
Ah, I didn't know that's what you did. So you're reciting these lines,
Yeah,
and that's
so
what, got it.
So when you read, like when if you have the like people that go through my programs, or if I do readings for, I take them through like their, first four gene keys of their activation sequence and give them sort of an idea in a set of sort of an overview or a synopsis of their gene keys. And then from that reading, I also go into channeled guidance and intuitive guidance for people. But then they take that information, they get the Gene Keys book, they start contemplating it, and all of these things
Ah,
begin awakening within them.
oh, cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty powerful.
Yes. Okay. So I want to go to the moment your son was born. He's 4.5 now,
Mm,
and what it did for you. Like it turned something else on, I think you were saying in one of something I was listening to. And I feel like, you had the podcast, The Masculine Mastery.
yep.
Um, and so listening to those episodes and, trying to bring men back to the masculine, like you're like this like leader, this beacon of light for the masculine energy. Like you're trying to but I feel like you kind of, it started, the light switch went off when your son was born.
I'd always sort of been into men's work and seeing the power of men's work. It's been a deeply healing containers for me to step into with a group of men that are truly radically vulnerable and authentic. And so I was in that process, previous to my son being born. But when my son was born, again, another catalyzing initiatory experience where there was sort of this activation that happened within me of this deeper mission that I knew I had to pursue. And that was really one of many things that I play, right, in this lifetime. One of those roles being, working with men and helping men to really open their hearts. Because what I've perceived, which may be a little bit different of a narrative of what people explain, so in a very broad stroke overview and context here, what I perceive is that this entire planet has obviously, as we know, to some degree have been manipulated and controlled by various nefarious and dark forces that if you just look at it from an energetic standpoint, it's an imbalance in the masculine. It's a dark, distorted shadow side of the masculine that has infiltrated the planet, creating fear and all of the things that we see. And along with the degradation of the earth as well as the oppression of the feminine. When I say oppression of the feminine, I'm not just speaking of oppression of female bodies, which that's obviously been a big theme and something that absolutely, hopefully, I pray that that begins to shift in a big way because it's just insane what has happened in that realm, but also within the female that is within all of us, male, female, or however you identify, we have these two polarity of energies. And so when I say the oppression of the feminine, it's not just like I said, females, but it's also the feminine energy within us. And this has created this deep anger and rage and sadness this is what was really shown to me this weekend in my Aya ceremony. And we need to, as a collective, especially men, begin to reconnect with these feminine energies within us, within the heart space, to soften our heart. To be soft doesn't mean not to be strong. Strong and soft can exist together, but the softening of the walls, of the rigidness, of the constriction, of the tension, of all of the things that men, especially because they aren't naturally tuned into their emotional side, have suppressed and repressed, and therefore created all of this pain within them. And so when we can begin to relate and see the feminine within us first and foremost in a different way, we can begin to see the feminine outside of us in a more powerful and profound way. And that creates this sort of union that begins to happen. And that for me is what is needed. We need to meet these feminine qualities of compassion, of creativity, of intuition, of softness with strength, with vigor, with courage, with leadership, with protection. When you combine those together within your being, first and foremost, you create a wholeness within yourself and therefore can show up in the world in a much more powerful way.
Right. Do you feel like that's what's happening right now? I feel like what you're just saying, I feel like that's what, and it's just gaining momentum to get us this movement of this energy on this planet. Where do you
I
see
think that's
that?
exactly what's happening. What I perceived this weekend in the ayahuasca ceremony, there was a lot of grief. And I've been tuned into this for a while because I've had to go through my own grief experiences, especially last year. I went through a really intense 3-month grief experience. But what I learned is that grief is the portal to awakening. When we descend into grief, which is a descension process, not an ascension process, a descension process, that is when we can ascend into the higher frequencies and ways of living. But we must face this grief that humanity at large is all going through. And we're all going through it in our own right, personally, individually, within our own lineage, but also within the one collective mind. And this grief is extremely difficult to confront, but it is, in my opinion, a main part of it is the result of this imbalance of energies within us. And when we can balance these energies within us as a result of facing this grief and sadness and rage and anger and all of the things we need to look at, we can begin to like really ascend as a whole synergistic coherent being.
How long do you think that's to have it be something where we're going to start noticing? We're noticing it now, but we're like with your son, say, in 10
Yep.
years, he'll be almost 15. Where do you see his life at that stage? Where do you look? How do you see that?
Yeah, so what I perceive from my own sort of intuition and also studying several theories and different things that people have been saying is that 2012 was a very powerful marker point, and people have misunderstood and misconstrued what 2012 was. It was the ending of the Mayan calendar, but it was the mark of a new beginning of a new cycle. But that new cycle doesn't happen in a flash, as maybe some people would perceive it as an apocalyptic event or something happening at that moment. It was a marker point in which we, and the Gene Keys actually talks about this as well, which again, it's another side conversation, but really this was where we, in order for us to awaken as a collective, we need to see certain things that are happening. And what we've seen really since then and more over the past 3 years has been the shadow aspects of humanity coming to the surface. Truth needs to be seen in order for us to awaken, and truth cannot be hidden. But for many years, certain truths have been hidden. And so these shadows have been arising to the surface in order for all of us to see them loud and clear. And as we witness them and see them, which can be very difficult, and we are going to see a lot more over these next coming years, few years for sure, is that there's going to be a lot more that's going to come up to the surface. And we need to be prepared within ourselves in order to witness this. And we can't go and move into a higher octave of being unless we do this shadow work. And that's why I preach this so much and why it's so important. But I am hopeful and optimistic that within even my lifetime, and perhaps even your lifetime, that we will see a perceived shift. Now, when we go into the deeper layers of consciousness, this shift happens first individually. So you align with the earth you want to live on. There's thousands, infinite parallel realities happening at one point, and you get to choose with your thoughts, your words, your actions every day what reality you want to live in. But there is almost like Bashar says, who's a channeler, he talks about how it's almost like a glass wall. You can still perceive people in the other reality, but you're living in yours. And as you continue to do your inner work and awaken the higher parts of your own consciousness, that is having a massive effect on the collective. And that's how we begin to raise the vibration of this planet. So yeah, I see this happening, and I perceive and feel that 2027 is a very pivotal year.
Yeah, I've heard that too lately a lot. And when you were talking about before you brought Bashar up, I go, gosh, he's reminding me of what Bashar teaches or how he talks. I'm going to go see Bashar in September.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, I can't wait. So who are your like mentors? What do you read or watch and all? Who do you get your inspiration from, or who calls
Mm.
you?
It's a great question. There's not many. I'm very discerning on the information that I take in. Not from a ego standpoint or I'm better than or better than thou, like none of that. It's more so there's a lot of, and what I would like to sort of convey here is that there's a lot of what people may call false light teachers that have been around and will continue to emerge, especially over this transitionary period we're in. And so there's a lot of people out there that may be perceived as a very powerful spiritual teacher or individual. But it's really important to tune in with your discernment and your intuition. And for me, I see this a lot. And so therefore, I have very few people within my own inner circle. One of them being Richard Rudd, who is the founder of the Gene Keys. I have deep reverence for. He's a very grounded human, right? He's
Hmm.
just very human. And that's for me how I like to approach my work. I never want to be perceived to be on a pedestal. I'm still a student, even though I do this work and I commit myself to the inner work. I'm still a student, and yes, I do teach and I guide. But for me, it's like I stay humble to the best of my ability because we're all in this human game learning. But Richard Rudd is one of them. Um, I mentioned Bashar. I love Bashar. I think he's very tuned in and is a very truthful channel. Um, yeah, like I'm just even thinking in my head, like who I'm looking at my books
Yeah, I
back
was
here.
wondering, like, what books
Who
do
is
you have back
it?
there?
Um, there, I don't know. There's very few. I just a lot of really where for me, just gain my wisdom from has been just my own inner guidance and continuing to open and listen to that because that's where all truth and wisdom resides.
Right. Do you get up every morning and do breath work? Like, what is your practice to open up those gifts?
I'm pretty relaxed. I don't have like this is what I do every day, all day, like sort of thing, or every morning. I generally, for the most part, I do some qigong movements. So I really love qigong, and because qigong is a sacred energy practice that utilizes your breath as well as these sacred movements to harness your energetic field. So I use it as a way of, we all have this uh, toroidal field that exists around us, side of us, and extends out quite large. And it all stems from the heart space. This is where your electromagnetic energy is.
What
Funny
the
enough,
heck?
fireworks going off and Zoom.
How did that happen?
I have no clue, but
I've never seen that before in my life.
oh, the synchronicities, the
Oh,
signs.
wow, that's amazing.
Um, so these movements help to sort of strengthen that field of energy. So I do that. Then I really like rigorous physical movement. That's really important for me to get me tapped in. And then of course, yeah, breath work I do throughout the day.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I could not do your breath work now. I think you've got me hooked and I love it. And
I'm
I
happy
love
to
you.
hear we have a positive addict.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And your voice, I hear in the morning, and there's something about your voice too. And that's part of who you are and what led you to that, because it speaks to what you do. I mean, it's
Thank
like
you.
part of the magic of it, which
Yeah.
I love. So people can find you, your website, your book, all the things.
Yeah, so all the information about everything, gene keys, breath work, my book that will release hopefully at some point this year, all of that can be found at christopheraugust.co. And then my Instagram, Christopher underscore August. For the app itself, again, you can access it through my website, or you can go to beatsandbreath.com. Beats and Breath is the app, or you can go to any app store, Apple or Google, and search Beats and Breath and download the app. We include a 4-part video series explaining, the process, what it is, why, how, and then we also have a 7-day free breathwork challenge so people can actually try it out. There's a lot of apps out there. It's like, oh no, pay me first and then experience. Like, no, go and try it out for yourself. If you like, if it resonates, beautiful. We have a whole other library. Every week we release new content. So there's a bigger library you can access to and subscribe to if you want to. But I like to give people value up front so they can really feel the essence and the energy that we put into that work.
How long did it take you to do that, to create that
Mm.
app?
Well, the app itself was only a few months with an amazing app development team, but the
Oh,
vision for
wow.
the app was several years. I
Okay.
met Johnny in 2020, and when we started creating, this sort of sonic breathwork experience and what we now call our company Beats and Breath started then, and we've been creating ever since to create the content to supply the app. So it's been a long journey of doing this, and it's we're continuing to just show up because we know it's helping thousands of people themselves.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, thank you so much, Chris, for being here and spending the time with me today. I've loved it. I've loved
I
getting to know
appreciate
you, and now you're part of my life because you'll be in my ear every morning.
it. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And yeah, it's truly an honor. Thank you for everything you're doing to spread awareness and raise consciousness on this planet.
Yes, thank you.